2025 has been a truly remarkable year for Korean content. From K-dramas to films, musicals, and animation, genres have grown deeper and more diverse, and the global response has been stronger than ever. Today, we'll take a time to reflect on Korean content through the standout works that defined this year. We're joined in the studio by two experts today. First, Jae Soh, professor and filmmaker at Seoul Institute of the Arts. Welcome, Professor Soh.
Nice to be here.
And we have Professor Chie Hye-won, culture critic and professor at Kyung Hee University. Welcome, Professor Chie.
Hello, good afternoon.
All right, so let's take a look back at 2025 K-contents, and let's start with Professor Soh. So 2025 truly felt like the year for K-pop Demon Hunters. And with record-breaking viewership on Netflix and also the soundtracks huge on global charts. So why do you think such a distinctly Korean narrative has resonated so strong with the global audience?
Well, I think the question to ask is, instead of asking like why a Korean story is so globally loved, I think you have to ask the question now. I think because of K-pop and K-drama over the years, the global sort of like transition has happened where I think now a lot of Korean content is universal. So the fact that we are a separate culture, in the past people would be maybe unfamiliar with Korean culture, but now Korean food, Korean beauty products, everything is sought after all over the world. So I think the world has finally, caught up to us, and I think the other ingredient to this is it's a really good story. KPop Demon Hunters is about sort of a coming-of-age story about a young woman sort of going through her struggles, and I think it really resonated with the fact that a lot of audiences took to that story, and then it happened to be Korean, with all the accoutrements that come with Korean culture, just made it very, very special, and that's why I think it succeeded.
I think it was really great timing. I think it took around 7 years to make this film. I think the time paid off well because this was the right timing where we have that confidence in Korean culture. All right, now Professor Chie, many have said that this work also demonstrated the potential for expansion of genre. So from an industry perspective, what do you think was the most significant change that K-pop Demon Hunters created?
Right, it is true that K-pop Demon Hunters has significantly increased international interest, not only in Korean K-pop, but also in Korean culture itself from a broad perspective. For instance, Huntrix and the Tiger Derby appeared in Macy's Thanksgiving Day parade in last November, and it was demonstrating that the continued strong interest in K-pop Demon Hunters in the United States. Because of K-pop Demon Hunters, demand for exhibitions and merchandises at the National Museum of Korea has increased, and interest has expanded to include Korean clothing like gat and norige, and of course as well as the food like kimbap and ramyeon. So K-pop can be said to have become a genre with a specific style, and the K-pop market as a system is expanding further as there are already K-pop groups do not include any Koreans. So I think content utilizing K-pop will likely expand into more diverse areas within similar genres such as animation, OTT series, movies, musicals, and etc.
Now, before we move on to our next topic, what is your favorite part or character of K-pop Demon Hunters? What about you, Professor Chie?
I personally like the first appearance scene of Saja boys. So I was very, very surprised by the way of transforming the Grim Reaper into an idol, and the concept actually runs through the theme of the entire work, helping the Demon Kings plan by weakening the Huntrix's fan base and destroying the Hon Moon, which I think a very smart way of storytelling.
And what about you, Professor Soh?
I actually like two characters, not the main ones, but I like the tiger.
Derpy,
Everybody really, so I think the tiger is a great symbol of Korea anyway. And the way the movie used it was not as a monster that's trying to kill, but it's actually very curious kind of creature. It makes a lot of mistakes, very human-like. So I think I just remember when things got really serious, that Tiger would kind of break that ice and make the story into something more interesting. And then actually, more than Rumi, I actually like Zoe of the Huntrix character.
The rapper.
Yeah, the rapper, because I think she's more modern, probably the most modern character, and I think a lot of younger, audiences really kind of take to her as well. And I think more representation of like modern, sort of like young Korean people.
I actually enjoyed Zoe's lyrics, the parts in Takedown especially. But for me, I actually loved Rumi, the main character. But let's now shift over to another big series on Netflix. Of course, Squid Game. Now we went through all the 3 seasons. So Professor Soh, what is your overall, perception of Squid Game?
Well, I think when I watched the series, I just remember the moment I was really struck by it was the red light, green light, the doll. When that came out, I just remember I was going, wow, this is really fascinating. It's a different kind of survival game. Because there have been many movies like Hunger Games and things like that, kind of like about survival. But I think this was specifically, again, coming back to the theme of it's very Korean. Like the doll itself is based on, I don't know if a lot of people know, but it's based actually on textbook drawings. There's a female character named Youngie that it's based on. And basically, in a lot of Korean sort of minds, that character represents sort of official sort of, I guess, discipline and also the education system. And usually they make announcements for the public and things like that. But in this story, it's actually killing people. And so I think it just kind of subverted the whole thing, and it made it about sort of, I guess, about the people that have things and then the people that don't. And I think when COVID hit, everybody's home watching Squid Game. The first season was just like a global phenomenon, as you know. Everybody watched it, and everybody identified with it, because it's talking about them. It's not just a Korean story, but I think a lot of people really identified with it. And then the second season, of course, everybody was going, can you top the first one? But as you know, the director, Hwang Dong-hyuk, he never intended to make a series out of this. It was going to be a one-off, but of course it was such a global hit that, basically at first I think he said, I might do this as like, have a bunch of writers write with me, but he ended up writing every single episode. And in season 2, basically the games got bigger, more fantastic. And then season 3, I think, like most, hit series, kind of a letdown for a lot of people, disappointments, because the first one was really like lightning in a bottle. It was so special. Everybody loved it. So I think there's no way to top that. And I think for the filmmakers, how do you make something better than that?
Right. I think we're all on the same page that we enjoyed Squid Game. Maybe some differences in season 1, 2, and 3. But Professor Chie, you are the expert in performance and arts. Was there any moment when you thought, while watching Squid Game, this could be turned into a musical, maybe? Because there are some OTT series that do turn into musicals.
Right. Yeah, it may or may not be possible to turn Squid Game to a musical, to stage. So, I mean, there are many cases of the TV series or the movies being adapted into plays or musicals, but honestly, only a few are successful. So this is because it's challenging to remake the same works to reflect the different genre differences between media and live performance, especially for work like a Squid Game, which features large cast members and the delicate visual aesthetics. It is even more challenging to adapt it on stage. But if some producers or creators are interested to adapt this series into the musical, personally, I recommend considering stage version of Squid Game as a sequel, prequel, or spin-off, rather than adapting the same concepts as on the OTT series. For instance, one option would be the produce a prequel stage version with the frontman as a main character. So like a frontman, the musical frontman from Squid Game.
Right. I mean, I wonder how you could put all that violence that we see in the series on the stage and with the songs. So it's probably not going to be an easy task.
It would be very, very expensive.
Right.
If you want to remake everything, yes.
Exactly. All right. Now let's move on to films. Now, Professor Soh, it wasn't a tremendously big year for K cinema. However, we did have some highlights, such as 2 big releases from top Korean directors, right?
The 2 big directors were, Bong Joon-ho, who actually made a movie for Warner Brothers called Mickey 17. So a sci-fi movie starring Robert Pattinson. It was kind of like a global sort of phenomenon. And also Park Chan-wook did No Other Choice, which was now, I guess, like a real black comedy kind of movie, sort of like moving out of his comfort zone for a lot of movies that are kind of very serious. I found that No Other Choice had a lot of humor in it and things like that. So the 2 directors came out, and what's interesting about the 2 films is that, both directors have sort of like, been recognized by the West pretty early on, and Bong Joon-ho's won the Oscar, and Park Chan-wook's already directed, things like The Sympathizer. He's worked for like BBC and HBO before, and so both directors are very much used to working outside of Korea. But I think their works are definitely sort of maturing in a sense because they're going outside. Like, Bong Joon-ho basically did Okja before as a sci-fi movie and, Snowpiercer. But I felt that Mickey 17 was really, watching that movie was using all of Hollywood's sort of power of, special effects, and the distribution arm of the Warner Brothers system was kind of interesting for him because, before he was making his basically Korean productions. And for Park Chan-wook, I think he's going out of his comfort zone as well. His movies are mostly like about revenge, a lot of violence and things like that. And No Other Choice does have violence, but this time although I found even Decision to Leave very funny, but when I was sitting in the theater, everybody's so serious about it when they're watching it on the screen. But No Other Choice, I found the audience laughing along with the movie as well. And also an interesting about the 2 movies is that about the same amount of audience, like, basically Mickey 17 had more, but Park Chan-wook's movie was around 3 million, both of them like 2.9, stuff like that. So similar kind of reaction by Korean audiences. But of course, we'll have to see how Park Chan-wook's film's doing abroad, because now, it's kind of like doing the rounds outside of Korea as well.
Right. I personally felt that Mickey 17 was an intriguing topic to put into a film. And then with No Other Choice, I really enjoyed the acting, especially in that one. So those were really 2 big movies this year in Korean cinema. And now let's move on to a genre that really made it big this year, musical. Especially, the major highlight was maybe Happy Ending, winning 6 Tony Awards. And I can't help but notice that you look like Claire, one of the main characters inside the musical. So what do you think allowed this Korean original musical resonate with the global audience?
Yeah, it was a huge achievement. So finally, Happy Ending. So maybe Happy Ending developed and premiered in Korea first, and it tells a universally relatable story about robot Oliver and Claire and the human beings. So the Broadway production was further developed to suit the local audiences, including directions and design, the stage design. Although the scale is relatively small compared to other Broadway shows, the pure and beautiful story and the addictive numbers captivated the audiences. So it is also attractive that this work is set in Korea, including Jeju Island, and uses Korean as it is like 화분. So one of the reasons behind the success of this work is the growing interest of in Korean culture. So in fact, among the merchandise goods from the Broadway productions, T-shirts, keychains, and the ornament featuring 화분 are garnering popularity.
And very briefly, Professor Soh, I think maybe Happy Ending was also turned into a movie.
Yes.
So what did you think of that version, and also how you transform musicals to movies?
Actually, it's kind of ironic because the director, Lee-won is actually a student of Seoul Institute of the Arts in the film department, so ex-student, graduate. So I actually, talked to him a lot about how this happened, but they did it on a very low budget situation. Originally, it was going to be like, $10 million film with big stars. But it, basically they bought the rights for the movie earlier before the Tony happened. So they bought it for very cheap. So there was a lot of hope that it was going to be a big movie, but basically delays in film development happened, and so the deadline for the rights to the movie was happening this year. So they ended up basically scaling it down to basically like, I think the budget was like around 100,000 US, so it's really cheap. Basically, almost like none of the people got paid that well. But so the student Iwon, now as a director, he actually wrote the script for the the $10 million version, which CJ Entertainment loved. The director didn't like it. And so he ended up making it with Shin Ji-up and Kang Hae-in, who are actually the actual sort of like, they started as understudies, but now they themselves are stars on the musical stage. And so I asked him, I said, why don't you use the original actors for that? But basically he had a vision about the movie, and he wanted the performers not to be just the adaptation of the, what happened in Taeyangno, but he wanted more kind of a younger face for that. So, and I felt like when I watched the movie, it was done really beautifully, but at the same time, because it had such a low budget, there was not enough marketing costs. A lot of people knew that this movie is happening. So basically, it didn't make that much money, but at the same time, I think the actual production company that bought the rights recouped the cost. But I heard that, basically Hugh Park and William Aronson, the original people, actually, they saw this movie and they asked them, like, what did you think? And their response was like, it was actually not our blessing, and they changed some parts of the story which we don't really like. So I don't think those guys really liked it. But at the same time, I think it's wonderful that they made a movie version out of it. Of course, like, nobody predicted this musical to be this big. It was kind of like a Cinderella story, right? Because it was sort of like it was successful in Taeyangno, and a lot of musical lovers loved it, but it was really strictly in Korea, and then they kind of changed it in English, and the music is very beautiful anyway. So I think there's an expectation now, because it's kind of a sleeper hit in the U.S. And I heard, like, it's sold out. Every performance is sold out. So maybe the director of Wicked will do the U.S. version of this movie. I don't know. I'm just kind of talking, my personal opinion. But I think now the scale of it's going to be bigger. But I'm really glad the Korean version came out. So a lot of people watched it, the fans of the musical itself.
Right.
It's so interesting to listen to those behind stories as well. And I wish we could go on further. But last but not least, just let me ask you, what are you looking for in the world of K-content in 2026, Professor Ji?
Yeah, the OTT series market, I'd say, likely to continue expanding, I think, next year as well. However, growth remain as concern as there are risks surrounding the market environment, such as the rising production cost. However, it is worth paying close attention to the significant increase in government funding for musical market, as we just mentioned. That it is because of the Tony Award winning maybe happy ending. So in particular, with the funding for creation of large-scale musicals and entry into the overseas market expected to increase significantly next year. So it is worth keeping an eye on the growth and expansion of the Korean musical industry in 2026.
All right, OTT and musicals. And you, Professor Soh?
I think basically, as I was kind of talking about it on another show, smaller budget movies are going to come out. I think more niche subject matter, a lot of mysteries, a lot of comedies. I predict that there's going to be a lot more animation because of K-pop Demon Hunters. Actually, the number 2 movie this year was Demon Slayer, the Japanese animation. It was a huge hit in Korea. And so I think, although Korean cinema is suffering right now, I think we need to kind of change up the sort of the genres of what people's expectations are. And I think kind of a niche themed movie is more in demand now more than ever. So I think, as maybe happy ending is, we should maybe kind of turn a lot of musicals that are successful into movies as well.
I hope so.
Yeah.
Right.
So I'm just kind of predicting kind of a new sort of twist in genres in 2026 for sure.
All right, looking so much forward to all of that to happen in the new year. And thank you very much for your insights. We should repeat this one day. And Happy New Year. Thank you very much, Professor Ji.
Thank you very much. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. And thank you very much, Professor Soh.
Thank you.
Thank you.